so.
In the right order.
Probably. Make it up.
Ready? Good evening. The time is now 7:08, and I would like to call the Beloit City Council meeting to order at this time. May we have a roll call, please?
Roll call shows all councilors except Councilor Noonan present.
Thank you. Second item is Pledge of Allegiance. Will we all stand?
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The third item is special orders of the day and announcements. Item 3A, please.
A proclamation recognizing Officer Ryan Flanagan, Captain Dan Rissy, and the Beloit Police Department for receiving the Cities and Villages Mutual Insurance Company Significant Program Award for the Force Multiplier Program.
Councilor Vice President Van Bogart and Chief Jacobs.
Thank you, President Levy. This is an official proclamation of the City of Beloit. Whereas the Beloit Police Department strives to reduce crime and apprehend criminals, and officers are encouraged to be proactive in this effort. And whereas Officer Ryan Flanagan has had the initiative to create an innovative program called Force Multiplier, which utilized radio-dispatched City of Beloit workers as eyes for the police department. And Officer Flanagan has developed a training program and successfully presented it to several city departments. And whereas since Force Multiplier was initiated by the Beloit Police Department, several significant arrests have been made, including 2 for operating a motor vehicle without owner's consent, 1 for graffiti, and 2 stolen vehicles have been recovered. And whereas Patrol Captain Dan Rissy submitted Officer Flanagan's Force Multiplier program on behalf of the department to the Cities and Villages Mutual Insurance Company as part of their National Significant Program Award competition. And whereas CIVMIC selected Force Multiplier as one of the 5 winners of their annual competition and awarded the Beloit Police Department $1,000 for safety equipment. Now therefore be it resolved that the City of Beloit does hereby call upon all citizens of Beloit, Wisconsin to recognize Officer Ryan Flanagan, Captain Dan Rissy, and members of the Beloit Police Department for promoting a safe and healthy community, minimizing personal injury, preventing loss of life, and protecting property and natural resources through the Force Multiplier program. Dated this 21st of November 2011, Kevin D. Levy, Council President. I'll present the proclamation to Officer Flanagan. Congratulate him.
Thank you.
And Chief, congratulations.
Members of the council and Beloit community, I think that this award and Officer Flanagan represent a lot about the Beloit Police Department and our members, how they think, how they do problem solving. And while we're all busy, of course, but I think it reminds us that we are busy, but that doesn't mean that it's all important. This program that Ryan helped develop and push through the department and the city is one of the important things that we do, and we appreciate that recognition. Ryan?
Thanks very much for this, and I'm just glad to represent the department and a lot of people that work for us. So, thank you.
Thank you. (3B), please.
A proclamation in commemoration of the 70th anniversary of the Wisconsin Air Patrol.
Vice President Van Bogart.
An official proclamation of the City of Beloit, Wisconsin. Whereas Civil Air Patrol was founded on December 1st, 1941 by a fledgling group of volunteers led by civilian pilots who flew their own planes to support America's efforts in World War II. And whereas the wartime effort, which included border patrol operations, search and rescue, disaster relief, forest fire patrol, and emergency transportation of personnel and critical cargo, also resulted in 64 deaths and 150 lost aircraft by war's end. And whereas since that auspicious beginning, a modern-day Civil Air Patrol has emerged as one of the nation's premier humanitarian service organizations, serving all 50 states, the nation's capital, and Puerto Rico, saving lives, finding those who are lost, helping fellow citizens in times of disaster, working to keep America safe, preparing future leaders, offering aerospace education to inspire our nation's youth, and honoring our military. And whereas in the past year alone, many of Civil Air Patrol's professional volunteers participated in 1,016 search and rescue missions in which they are credited with saving 113 lives. And whereas the recent high visibility Civil Air Patrol missions have included responses to tornadoes, forest fires, tsunamis, hurricanes, wildfires, flooding, 9/11, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, and counter-drug missions across the nation. And whereas the Civil Air Patrol's youth program currently includes more than 26,500 cadets who benefit from a curriculum that trains them to be leaders, offers them opportunities for flight and pilot training, and teaches life-saving emergency services techniques. And whereas the Civil Air Patrol includes 868-member chaplain corps that provides counseling services for soldiers and their families and disaster victims, and partners with Wreaths Across America to honor military veterans by helping sponsor and place tens of thousands of wreaths at the graves of fallen soldiers. And whereas the Civil Air Patrol is celebrating 70 years of performing these missions for America, now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Beloit hereby honors the men and women who have served and those who continue to serve their fellow citizens through the Civil Air Patrol, and declares that December 1st, 2011 as Civil Air Patrol Day throughout the City of Beloit, and transmits a duly authorized and signed copy of this resolution to Colonel Clarence Peters, commanding of the Wisconsin Wing Civil Air Patrol, adopted this 21st day of November 2011. Kevin Levy, Council President. I'm not certain whether there's anybody here this evening to accept this, but we will send it on to Colonel Peters.
Thank you very much. That concludes item 3. Item 4 is public hearings. Item 4A, please.
A proposed ordinance to amend the zoning district map to change the zoning district classification from PUD, Planned Unit Development District, to R1A, Single Family Residential District, for the properties located at 1907 and 2000 Aspen Drive and 1907, 2000, and 2001 Dell Drive. The Plan Commission recommended approval 5-0.
Mrs. Christensen, please.
On February 2nd, 2009, the City Council approved a zoning map amendment for the properties that Rebecca just listed from R1A Single Family Residential District and R2 Two Family Residential District to Planned Unit Development District. At that time, they also approved a PUD master land use plan for those parcels, which was called the Meadows, and proposed the construction of 9 single-story residential buildings with 8 units in each for a total of 72 units, with the intent to apply for tax credits from WIDA. They did apply for 2 years and were denied both years, and so we never did receive a PUD final plan for the development. Therefore, that plan approval has lapsed, and the ordinance directs the Plan Commission to remove the land from the PUD zoning district, which we did process through Plan Commission. We did notify the neighbors within 300 feet, and no one came to the public hearing or called. And Plan Commission did review this at its November 9th meeting and did vote unanimously 5-0 to recommend approval of this rezoning to R1A Single Family Residential.
Thank you. This is a public hearing for item 4A. At this time, I would open up the public hearing for item 4A. If there's anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward and state your name and address for the record. Is there anyone wishing to speak on item 4A this evening? Anyone wishing to speak on item 4A this evening? Third and final call, anyone wishing to speak on item 4A this evening? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing at this time and entertain a motion from council. Motion. We need a motion to suspend the rules for the second reading for approval. It's been motioned by Haynes to suspend the rules. Is there a second? Second. Second by Lukey. Council discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor of suspending the rules for a second reading, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, passes 6-0. Now to the merits. Is there a motion for approval? The motion by Spreitzer. Is there a second? Second. Second by Haynes. Any council comments or discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, passes 6-0. Item 4B, please.
A resolution authorizing a conditional use permit to allow an outdoor seating area and the outdoor sales, possession, and consumption of alcohol in a C3 Community Commercial District for the property located at 65 Portland Avenue. Plan Commission recommended approval, 5-0.
Mrs. Christensen, please.
Dave Klein Sr., the owner of Klein's Club 88, has applied for this conditional use permit for the outdoor seating area and outdoor sales, possession, and consumption of alcohol. They are proposing a 1,450 square foot outdoor seating area on the east side of the existing building. The proposed outdoor seating area consists of a covered bar area, an uncovered deck, an emergency exit, and the ramps leading from the deck to the elevated bar area. They are indicating that at this time it'll be 8 tables and 32 chairs. They are proposing that it be surrounded by a wood privacy fence 8 feet in height. This proposed fence does not comply with the current fence regulations, so they would actually need a variance from the Board of Appeals in order to get that fence. If approved, that would be their next step. The application does not include the 6-foot by 28-foot outdoor seating area near the Portland Avenue entrance, which is shown in the sketches, as it would encroach into the public right-of-way. At Plan Commission, I did say we'd go back and take a look at where that lot line actually was, and we had the city engineer pull the relocation order from when we did the Portland Avenue bridge project and expansion, and it does indicate that that building is right on the property line, so that outdoor seating area would encroach into the public right-of-way and would not be allowed. The off-street parking requirements in the zoning ordinance require taverns to provide off-street parking stalls in an amount equal to 50% of capacity. Based on our analysis of that, even with the outdoor seating area, they will comply with those off-street parking requirements. We did send this out to the neighbors within 300 feet, and we did hear from one neighbor who was concerned about trash, and we just incorporated that within the conditions which are included in your resolution. And Plan Commission did hold a public hearing. No, none of the neighbors did come out. Plan Commission recommended approval of the conditions which are included in the resolution, which are that this conditional use permit authorizes the 1,450 square foot outdoor seating area on the east side of the existing building, shown in the application attachments, and the extension of the sales, possession, and consumption of alcohol into said area. Prior to establishment of the conditional uses, the applicant shall amend the liquor license for the premises to include the outdoor seating area. The outdoor seating area shall be surrounded by a fence. The applicant may only construct an 8-foot privacy fence if the Board of Appeals grants a variance to the height and opacity requirements in the fence ordinance. Before construction begins, the applicant shall obtain an architecture review certificate and a building permit. The maximum capacity of the outdoor seating area shall be 32 persons, except during previously authorized special events. The maximum capacity shall be posted inside the building and within the outdoor seating area, and the door leading to the outdoor seating area shall be marked as an exit. The outdoor seating area shall include an emergency exit door or gate that leads to the parking lot. The door or gate shall be at least 3 feet wide, and a clear exit path shall be maintained. The applicant shall provide a visible and/or audible fire alarm within the outdoor seating area. Music may not be played in the outdoor seating area after 10, and the outdoor seating area shall include trash and recycling containers, and all litter shall be disposed of daily. And then just our standard condition that any major changes will come back through this public process, and that we may approve minor changes administratively. And you may recall a lot of these conditions are typical for the outdoor seating areas. They're pretty standard, and we've been pretty consistent across all the seating areas.
Okay, thank you. Item 4B is public hearing. At this time, I would like to open up the public hearings for item 4B. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on item 4B this evening? Please step forward and state your name and address for the record. Anyone wishing to speak on item 4B this evening? Third and final call, anyone wishing to speak on item 4B? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing at this time and entertain a motion from council. Is there a motion? Motion by DeForest. Is there a second? Second by Lukey. Councilor DeForest.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Christensen, if the Board of Appeals does not grant the fence variance, what will be in place for fencing?
4-foot fence, and it has to be 50% that you can see through it, because it's on the street side.
Right.
And while I recognize that the street side is way higher, that's what the ordinance says. And that's why the fence actually is a good argument for hardship, because it is a kind of unique site, and that, they do actually meet the standards for a hardship under a variance, but it still would have to go to the Board of Appeals for their approval.
I in particular have expressed concerns with these outdoor seating areas in the past that are fairly close to sidewalks. And this seems to be the closest yet that we've gotten to sidewalk. It's hard to tell from the drawing how much distance is between that sidewalk, which is highly used by pedestrians. It's part of our bike path system. What's the distance about between that sidewalk and their alcohol outdoor seating area?
I don't know the exact distance. My guess is it's about a foot away, foot or two. We did have one that was this close before, the coffee shop in Heritage View. The bike path is also that close. So it's not been unheard of, but it is close. And in that case, I think we did a shorter fence because that's what they requested. So, I mean, it's a different kind of environment, a tavern versus a coffee shop with alcohol as special events. So it is a little bit different, but we did approve one in the past.
Thank you.
Council Van der Bogart.
Yes, Ms. Christensen, the topography here, this is coming down a hill or going up a hill, depending on which way you're going on Portland Avenue. Visually, will the motorists be able to look in or over that fence and see the action and activity within the enclosed area?
If you look at this photo, you can actually see a car on Portland Avenue, and you can see where the outdoor seating area would be. I mean, I think the 8-foot fence isn't going to look out of scale given how low this is compared to Portland Avenue. I mean, it depends on the height of the fence if they're going to be able to see over. I mean, if it's an 8-foot fence, they're not going to be able to. If it's a 4-foot fence, they're clearly going to be able to see inside the outdoor seating area, I would think. But you can see on this photo where the bike path is versus where the sidewalk is, which actually goes uphill, and then you can see a car actually on Portland Avenue. So it gives you a sense of where that is.
Do we have any idea how many citizens, children and or otherwise, during the school year or other times use that sidewalk and or bike path?
I have no idea. I mean,
Personal experience.
okay.
Highly used.
Yeah, I just don't drive through there that often.
Anything else, Council Van der Bogart?
No, thank you.
Council Spreitzer?
To me, there's a fairly big difference between an 8-foot fence and a 4-foot fence. I certainly hope they would get the variance to be able to do the 8-foot fence. Do we have the ability to make this contingent upon them getting that, or do we have to just take our chances then not know what type of fence we end up getting?
I don't know how you would write that. Tom Casper, do you have any idea how you would write that? I mean, you could lay it over till Board of Appeals acts, and then take it up after that. I mean, we had councils in the past who wanted to act on it before it went to Board of Appeals. I mean, we can have the clients file with Board of Appeals, and then if that gets approved, lay it over till that time. If you so desire, I'm sure we could do that.
I'd make that a motion to see if there's interest in that.
Been motion by Spreitzer, second by DeForest to lay this over.
How long would it take
how-
for the Board of Appeals to act?
That was going to be my
They haven't
question.
filed yet, so I think at this point, we may be looking that it's not coming back till January. Second meeting in January is my guess. Board of Appeals meets once a month, and I think it's the second Tuesday. So I think at this point, given the lateness of November, that we're probably looking at the January meeting of Board of Appeals, which would put it on your agenda for the second meeting in January, which I don't know that, I mean, given that we're entering into winter, that's a big issue. But
Okay, Council DeForest?
I was just going to say, I don't suppose this would present much of a hardship on the business to delay this till January when we're about to not have much outdoor seating, dining time right now anyway.
yeah, I don't know.
Okay, there is a motion and a second to, let me formulate this correctly, to lay this over until it goes to the Board of Appeals to see if they would approve or disapprove, at which time it would come back to the council. So we're looking at possibly in January. That,
That's fine. You've got a motion in a second.
there's a motion and a second. Any other council comments or discussion? All those in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes 6-0. So I think we're done with that one, right? Item, thank you. Item 5 is citizens' participation. At this time on the agenda, I do have several people that would like to speak under citizens' participation. I will call your name. If you could come forward and state your name and address for the record. We ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. We ask you to refrain from personal attacks. I will try not to cut you off at the 3-minute mark. I would allow you maybe to go a little bit over, but I want to make sure we have several people that would like to speak tonight, so I would ask that you be respectful of the time and other people and limit your comments to the 3 minutes or less. The first one that I have is Debbie Fisher.
Good evening. Debbie Fisher, 1477 Fisher Road, and I'm a property owner at 1338 McKinley. I'm here to show support for keeping the ordinance, the city ordinance that provides for guns not to be allowed in public buildings. And a couple reasons for that are firearms are the second leading cause of injury and death in the United States, accounting for over 30,000 deaths and 71,000 injuries. Over 80% of teen homicides and almost half of teen suicides involved a gun. Overall, more than half of all homicides involved a gun. Since May of 2007, concealed handgun permit holders have killed at least 189 individuals, including 9 law enforcement officers in 26 states. I do understand that this law is in effect in Wisconsin, but I'm also very concerned about guns being in our public buildings, mainly for the reason that people can get angry and lose their control and pull a gun on someone. Our police officers already have a tough job, and they don't need to be worrying about this. They're going to be worrying about it on the streets as it is, because guns are a hazard, but they don't need to be worrying about it in our public buildings as well. And my biggest concern is people that will be caught in the crossfire of this. An angry person, a person that doesn't have a permit, there could be children, there could be innocent people caught in the middle. So I'm really urging you to keep the ordinance the way it is. At least our public buildings can be safe. Our schools don't allow them, thank God. And our children are going to school safe. We need to let them know and other people know that our public buildings will be safe from this. Thank you.
Thank you. The second one is Robert Ballard. Ballard. Could you just state your name and address for the record?
Robert Ballard,
Okay.
Beloit, Wisconsin, 842 Bluff Street. Good evening, councilors and Manager Larry. I want to speak on the gun ban ordinance posting. I've been in Beloit for 73 years, 55 years a tax-paying property owner, graduate from Beloit Memorial High School, nearly 30 years employed by Beloit Corporation in the engineering department, and I owned my own business here in Beloit for 12 years. I'm now retired. This is about my Second Amendment rights. Be sure the Second Amendment is my right and not a privilege. Rights are given to us, the people, by God. Privileges are offered by governments. What governments give you, governments can take away. So the bigger the government, the smaller the people. If you create unconstitutional zones in Beloit and Rock County, you are taking away portions of our rights. The right to conceal carry. So what's next? We got crime, drugs, gangs here in Beloit and State Line area. It's all shameful, but taking away our individual right to protect ourselves is also shameful and unconstitutional. By creating gun-free zones, you are targeting people by the criminals. Do y'all remember Columbine? Nobody's going to forget that. Closing, at least for now, follow the newly created concealed carry law until it can be made even better for true constitutional carry. In a republic, and we're a republic, not a democracy, the civil authorities' duty is to secure everyone's God-given inalienable rights, not to take them away. Incrementalism is a way to circumvent the law of the land, a sneaky end run to accomplish a new precedent. Folks, this is not the People's Republic of Madison. This is about guarding the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Zarell.
Mike Zorrell, 1756 Carlisle. I prepared a handout. Did everybody get that? You can follow along. Basically, like to talk about three things. First thing is misconceptions right now regarding the ordinance, the gun ban. Second thing are reasons to oppose it. And then the last thing would be some suggestions to improve the ordinance, assuming that you weren't going to oppose it. So getting started, three misconceptions. Number one, guns have been banned since the 1970s, and the new ordinance just keeps things the same. Problem there is, look, maintaining the status quo, just for the sake of maintaining the status quo, is not a reason to maintain it. Number two, was mentioned that we don't need metal detectors because we didn't need them before. Well, that's true. We had the gun ban before. We didn't need the metal detectors, but guess what? That's because we've been lucky. You know, you look at an airport, they don't rely on the signs alone just to keep the bad guys out. They have metal detectors and security guards. Number three, there was a comment that we didn't need lockers before, so we don't need them now. Not true. Back then, concealed carry wasn't allowed. Nobody was walking around Beloit legally with their permit and their gun. Well, guess what? Now that's different. So now you have a need for citizens to have a safe place to check their firearms. This is especially true for people who do not own cars, or for even people that do own cars, but they want to feel safe walking between their car and a city building. Now, next section, reasons to oppose the ordinance. There's 5 of them. First reason, the city has not provided any objective reasons why this ordinance makes us better off. Reason 2, it increased costs to taxpayers. You're going to have the material costs for signs. You're going to have the labor to install those signs. You're going to have to maintain those signs once they're up. And you're also going to have legal liability costs. By approving this ordinance, you're basically waiving the immunity that the state gives you from liability. Reason 3, makes our community less safe. Posting a sign is not an effective means to enforce this ordinance. Additionally, the Supreme Court has ruled, Castle Rock versus Gonzalez, that individuals are responsible for protecting themselves. The police have no legal duty to protect any individual from harm. So what this ordinance is doing is it's greatly diminishing the ability of law-abiding citizens to defend themselves, and it replaces that diminished ability of self-defense with absolutely nothing. Reason 4, it infringes on personal liberties and civil rights. Private businesses can ban the concealed carry, and the patrons have a choice to go to another business if they don't like that, or they can waive their right to knowingly enter. But I don't have an option if it's a city government. You guys are the only game in town. There's no other alternative. Additionally, a person's rights are violated under the color of the law if they depend on bus transportation, and concealed carry is prohibited on the bus or at the bus depot. So if I'm taking the bus and it's legal for me to conceal carry somewhere else in the city, you guys are effectively taking that right away. And then reason 5, the last reason, gives Beloit a bad image. Voting in favor of the ordinance demonstrates a city councilor's mistrust of his or her neighbors and the law-abiding citizens of the community. So to sum it up, I did come up with some suggestions on the back page to make this ordinance better. Number 1, repeal the current ordinance and table the proposed ordinance for 1 year to evaluate what effect, if any, it has. 2, amend 1507 Part 4 so that it is legal for a potential victim to discharge a firearm for self-defense. 3, change the charge or the fine that a valid permit holder has so that it matches that if you're a valid permit holder at a local business that prohibits weapons. The difference here is that at the local business, it's just a Class B forfeiture. It's not a criminal charge. However, you do the exact same thing in city property. Now all of a sudden it becomes a criminal charge. It's a Class A misdemeanor and you get arrested. There's no sense in creating this double standard. Suggestion 4, limit the ban only to City Hall because the police station's right here, as well as places where alcohol is served. Number 5, explicitly exclude all city-owned buildings and facilities where the city business is not carried out. For example, the city owns a building and then rents that out to a private business, the decision of allowing conceal and carry should be left up to that business owner. 6, explicitly exclude open-air shelters, including bus shelters, not just open-air park shelters. And this is just commenting on the exact way that the ordinance is written. As well as number 7, I suggest recommending the word locations because it's redundant and confusing in the new ordinance. And my last suggestion, number 8, change the definition of dangerous weapon so that it excludes unloaded and holstered firearms. This would also be a cost-effective way to allow a valid permit holder to carry a non-dangerous weapon without having to install lockers. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Limbrick.
I'm Paul Limbrick. I reside at 102 North River Street, Janesville, Wisconsin, and I do have copies of my document available here if somebody would like to distribute them. I'll try and keep this as short as I can. Some of this material was covered in the Gazette, but I'll keep that very briefly. I do have additional ideas for all of us. Dear City Council and others, the book I had brought with me earlier, More Guns, Less Crime, was written by a very liberal anti-gun professor, John R. Lott, Jr. He had grown weary of the pro-gun crowds and their unceasing clamor. He then set out to do research that was above reproach to prove beyond doubt that the pro-gunners were completely wrong in all aspects. He sought help from every person or place who could offer him assistance in this endeavor. His first book was published in 1997 after several years of research. He has written another more comprehensive edition which continued onward in the same direction. These works garnered him high praise from such notables as Gary Kleck, Professor of Criminology and Criminal Justice of Florida State University, W. Kip Vicusi, Professor of Law and Director of Empirical Studies, Harvard Law School, and Kirkland and Ellis Professors of Law, Northwestern University. All research to date substantiates that the author's original anti-gun hypothesis was entirely and completely refuted. The idea that more people carrying guns create more danger to people has been proven to be unquestionably false by records of 48 states and the FBI. Such claims are nothing more than scarecrow ranting of the lesser informed. The public records and information referred to have been available to the public and law enforcement personnel for a number of years. The opinion of many experts that firearms in the hands of private citizens prevent 2.5 to 3 million crimes a year without necessarily firing a shot seems to be on pretty solid ground. The cost saving to taxpayers in prevention of theft, property damage, physical injury, loss of lives, the prosecution and incarceration by the use of private firearms is huge. I become suspect of control schemes when I discover that those who push gun control are the same ones who want more control of me. It is interesting to note that wherever gun controls are imposed upon the people, the crime rate always rises with the level of control imposed. Having been a police officer, I find it difficult to imagine why any law enforcement personnel without an axe to grind would state otherwise unless he is looking for job security or enjoys the bully pulpit. Most people seeking licenses for concealed carry have more firearm experience than their law enforcement counterparts. Some shoot daily and most weekly. They engage in both formal and informal target practice. They join pistol leagues, keeping formal scores and being no different than people who join bowling leagues. The crime rate for concealed carry people is less than 1/100%, which is less than for law enforcement personnel. Every state that has passed any form of concealed carry has experienced a drop in crime. The drop has been as little as 5% to nearly 10%. Those states showing the largest drop were the states that adopted the least restrictive measures, except Vermont. Vermont requires no permit for any manner of carry and has the lowest crime rate in the nation.
Mr. Limbrick, I'm going to interrupt you. If we can get you to summarize in just a few minutes here.
Yes, I could probably skip over a couple of paragraphs.
Okay.
Great, thank you. The state of Florida, one of the first to liberalize their gun laws, had an unusual thing happen. A particular crime was tracked for 6 months, beginning with the first day the law became effective. During that 6-month period, the crime rate reported by the state of Florida was an unbelievable drop of 33%. That crime was forcible rape. All living beings are born with a natural instinct for survival and self-defense. Therefore, it is beyond the realm of any government, power, or authority to license, tax, or regulate. Okay, I'll skip over a little bit then. Thank you. For the lack of bus transportation, I am forced to walk through unfamiliar, gang-infested neighborhoods. I become a criminal's target. Were I a woman, I would be terrified at such a prospect of becoming a crime victim. It is difficult to believe that such an astute city council with such forethought would deliberately expose its citizens, especially its women, to a high level of indefensible risk. If a person carrying a gun in a city park wished to use the bathroom, he could not do so without violating the proposed ordinance. He was flippantly told to take his gun to his car. A person who walked or rode a bicycle to the park would be denied the ability to comply. Applying the same law to women becomes even more difficult. Can you envision a woman with her young children being dropped off at a park by her husband or boyfriend, then being forced to leave her only source of protection outside on the ground while she went to a restroom? I can't imagine an adult woman going into a public restroom without her purse, even if it were guarded by a battalion of Marines. It is apparent to all observers that it is not proper or honorable for one to write rules for playing golf, basketball, or football without being highly and deeply involved in each respective sport. If you are a dog lover who deeply hates cats, you would not be deemed honorably qualified, nor would it be in the best interest of the city of Beloit to have you write an unprejudiced ordinance about cats. I see the proposed ordinance as being unconstitutional under the Second Amendment. It also denies equal protection under the 14th Amendment, is highly sexist, prejudiced against men, and treats women as non-entities. In the interest of balanced information, I suggest the council members read at least these additional books. I suggest the council they read, The Death by Gun Control by Aaron Zellman and Richard W. Stevens. Also, Dial 911 and Die by Richard W. Stevens. And America Fights Back by Alan Gottlieb and David Workman. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack Leader.
I'm Jack Leader from Janesville, Wisconsin. Incidents. Too many to count across the country. Some quick accounting. Milwaukee bus driver was attacked by passengers, beaten severely. Another Milwaukee bus driver attacked, beaten. Madison bus driver beaten brutally. State Fair Park in Wisconsin, hundreds of teens brutally beating defenseless fairgoers, dragging people out of their cars and damaging their cars and beating them, picking on people on the street outside of the park and beating them severely. All of them were defenseless. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Mr. Amara purchased gasoline at a PDQ store, boarded a bus near the road and headed far west. When the bus was near the intersection, O'Mara rose from his seat, walked toward the passengers. Mr. Nelson and his fiancée, Heather, O'Mara smiled, dumped the gasoline on Nelson, then lit a match and tossed it on him. The sudden burst of explosive flame filled the bus, injuring everybody on board. In a split second, the whole bus was on fire. Nelson, Gallagher, Whitting, bus driver Gary Issam, and passenger Rodney Schibber were all badly burned. Amara was burned also, not as badly. The fire quickly engulfed the victims in the bus, and how neighbors and passerbyers worked feverishly to do what they could to help the victims until medical personnel arrived the victims were sent to the hospital. It was feared that some might not live. Nelson was the most critically injured, with burns over 97% of his body, all defenseless. Over 2 million times a year, people use guns to defend themselves in the United States, to defend themselves and their property each year. And on a personal note, this summer, I tried to talk my brother into buying a gun to defend himself because it's not safe. That's what I kept telling him. He kept putting it off. Well, he was out at a casino and won some money. He called me up. He said, Jack, he says, I got some money to spend and I think I should buy a gun. Take me out and find one for me. Help me. Well, I took him out and we found the right gun. And I told him how to practice with it and showed him how to use it. Saturday night at 3 o'clock in the morning, his dog started barking wildly. His wife got up to see what was going on, and in comes the door, kicked in by a criminal. They were fighting in the dark, pitch black, couldn't see anything. She screamed, Mike, he's coming after you. Mike got up out of the bedroom, came out with his gun, took one shot. Well, first he warned him, said, I got a gun. And the guy came at him anyhow. And then he took a shot. And the guy laid down, and he told him to lay down. And he laid down on the floor. And he held him at gunpoint until the police arrived. In a conversation with the policeman, he said he might not have been here today because of that. Thank you.
Randall Fiora.
Good evening. My name is Randall Fiore. I'm Vice Chair of the Board of Appeals of the City of Beloit. And I'm here because I'm very concerned about the likelihood of weapons of any kind being allowed in Board of Appeals meetings. We sometimes have some contentious people that do come to these meetings, and although we have not had an incident yet as far as any physical altercations or anything like that, my concern is that when I first heard of this, I thought about the possibility that allowing someone in a Board of Appeals meeting to legally bear a weapon of any kind, I think is dangerous. I think you place us as Board of Appeals members in what could be a very contentious situation. Currently, we have no protection at our meetings. It's obvious there are no metal detectors in the building. We also have no officers, Beloit Police Department officers at our meetings. We've had 2 meetings, or hearings, let's call them, because that's what they are, hearings, where I would say a couple of the applicants took it to the parking lot. And getting to our vehicles was, I was a little afraid of what was going to happen, but got in my car and got out of here. The job that we're asked to do, we do because we volunteer and step forward to do it. It's not an easy job. We have to make some very tough decisions sometimes. They're gut-wrenching. And some of these people do get a little upset. And I don't know, as I sit where you're sitting, you know, how upset that person could get with a gun strapped on their belt. I don't have that answer. But I just ask you to think about it very carefully, because I think what we do in this building is much different than what others do. Thank you.
Thank you. Chuck Kuker?
That's Keeker.
Keeker, I'm sorry.
Again, thanks for hearing me. I'll just speak off the top of my head. As I stated the last time I was here, I think this is not a good idea to ban guns in the building unless you're going to go to the expense and trouble of having metal detectors and people to shake down the people that are coming in to make sure that they're not doing something wrong, because if you don't, it's a toothless law. Not only that, there is the aspect of there are feel-good laws. You know, let's ban guns, we'll all feel safer. Well, you can feel real safe, but are you safe? You ban the weapon in the building, the only people that are going to be in here with the weapons are going to be the police officer, who is going to be a target of the criminal who comes in with a gun wanting to do harm. As the gentleman just said, the zoning meetings are tantamount to a court, and in the court they have all the metal detectors and the security to keep the weapons out of the court. You go up to Janesville to the courthouse, your briefcase goes through a metal x-ray machine. They wand you down if anything beeps when you go through the metal detector. You have to turn your pockets out. You're not even allowed to bring in a pocket knife. They have vanishingly few crimes in there. But unless you're prepared to do that with the city, it's just a feel-good law, and it really does nothing to stop crime. It's just going to, as has been pointed out, deny the honest people the right to protect themselves, put a big burden on the honest person. It's got to put no burden at all on the criminals. Criminals do what they want to do. That's why they're criminals. That's the definition of the term. As the lady pointed out, it's an emotional thing. You know, a lot of people don't like guns. And there's a word for it. It's called hoplophobia, fear of weapons. This is often an unthinking fear. When people learn about guns and learn to use them, they get over their fear. Some people have been converted, as Mr. Lott was, that he was a rabid anti-gunner, and now he's one of our biggest proponents. I think what we're seeing here is, after years and years of people being trained by Hollywood and the media to fear guns, and you know, the people that have guns are either the guy in the white hat on the Western and the guy in the black hat on the Western. And this mindset has been that if you've got a gun, you're either a police officer or you're a bad guy. Now, that's not the way the Constitution is written. Everybody in this room is a member of the militia. If you're an able-bodied person, originally it was just men between a certain age, but everybody in this room is potentially able to defend themselves and defend others, men and women.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to summarize if you could.
I would just summarize by saying, I hope you don't pass this ban. Okay. I would really hope you don't.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Georgia Janich?
Correct.
Thank you.
Very few people get that correct the first time. I'm Georgia Janish. I'm from Janesville, Wisconsin.
Okay.
I do business in Beloit, and I have a daughter and son-in-law who teach school at the high school here. Okay. I want to read my statement. I gave you a copy, and I also included a couple of brief DVDs if you have time to watch them. On Wednesday, October 16th, 1991, Susanna Hupp and her parents were having lunch at the Luby's Cafeteria in Killeen, Texas, when George Hennard drove his truck into the cafeteria and opened fire on the patrons. Hupp instinctively reached into her purse for her weapon, but it was in her vehicle. Susanna had left her gun in her car to comply with Texas state law at the time, which forbade carrying a concealed weapon. Her father tried to rush Hennard and was shot in the chest. As the gunman reloaded, Susanna escaped through a broken window, believing that her mother was behind her. But instead, her mother cradled her mortally wounded husband while Hennard put a gun to her mother's head and pulled the trigger. The gunman murdered Hupp's mother and father, along with 21 other persons. and also wounded another 20 people. In her statement to Congress in 1993, Susanna Hupp said, "I'm not mad at the man who did this. It was obvious that he was a madman. And I'm certainly not mad at the guns that did this. They didn't walk in there by themselves and pull their own triggers. I am mad at my legislators for legislating me out of the right to protect myself and my family." The Second Amendment, she said, is not about duck hunting. It's about our right to be able to protect ourselves from you guys up there, and she pointed to the legislators. In an interview with Fox News after the Virginia Tech massacre in 2007, Hupp stated, "All of these mass shootings in the last 20 years have occurred in gun-free zones. I think we have created a shopping list for people who want a large body count. If guns are the problem," she said, "then why don't we see these mass shootings happen at NRA conventions, gun shows, or at skeet and trap shoots? They don't. They happen where guns are not allowed. I was angry at myself," she continued, "for what I realize now was an incredibly stupid decision to obey a bad law and allow my family to be killed." Dr. Susanna Hupp served 5 terms as a member of the Texas House of Representatives and testifies in Congress and across the country in support of concealed handgun laws. She is recognized as a leading advocate of an individual's right to carry a concealed weapon. She authored the book From Lubies to the Legislature, One Woman's Fight Against Gun Control. We've heard where guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. And let's remember, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away. Please vote no on the gun ban. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim Mork.
My name is Kim Mork, and my address is 1822 Sun Valley Drive. Most of our country's problems can be traced to the fact that elected officials are not listening to the citizens, but are listening to attorneys instead. After the last meeting of the City Council here in Beloit regarding concealed carry in public buildings, it would seem that you are following suit. I work in a public building in Rock County, and the county board passed a ban against concealed carry in my building. Now we have signs on all of our doors letting the criminals know that no one will be armed against them if they choose to come at us. I, for one, would be under my desk praying fervently for a good Samaritan to return fire and save us. I'd be willing to pay their fine, which, by the way, is only $25 in Rock County. What extortion for the city of Beloit to seek to charge $300 to $500 for a violation of this rule. You know that criminals will not obey these bans, so the ban is only against those who have passed the background checks and taken classes and are registered to carry. Why do you fear the good guys? There have been arguments stating that the gun could be left in the car. Don't you think that criminals, upon finding out about this practice, might use the opportunity to break into the car to get to the weapon? Yes, let's make it easier for them to get the guns. I especially noted how this issue is codified as dangerous weapons in city buildings. Why didn't you just say firearms and other weapons? Isn't it so stated as to arouse maximum fear in people? I can only hope that common sense and a recommitment to our Constitution and the people prevails on this issue. I oppose this ban.
Thank you. Bill Mitchell.
My name is Bill Mitchell. I live on Skyview Drive in Janesville. What I've put down on a poster in front of you is the Second Amendment. And what that is each and every one of you have taken an oath to uphold, support, and defend those 27 words that are in there. We've heard a lot about the gun ban, what it's going to do. I find it not humorous, I don't know the correct word, but in a park, some mother's out there enjoying the day, and she has to take her little children over and maybe use the diaper change station. So a mother goes in there, uses the station, you're going to fine her $500 for changing her baby's diaper because she has a gun in her purse? You better give some long thought to that one. Well, let's go into the Second Amendment, those 27 words. Where do we go when we want to have an interpretation of what that means? We go to the court. Who's the highest court? The United States Supreme Court. Let's look at a recent decision, the District of Columbia versus Heller. Recent, 2008. And what did the Supreme Court say? They confirmed that the rights of the Second Amendment adhered to individuals. You see the word individual in there? No. But the court said that's who that adheres to. Further, the court found that a well-regulated militia related not to formally organized state or federal militias, but to the pool of able-bodied men who were available for conscription. Bet you didn't know that, did you? And furthermore, they went on to state the security of a free state. That's in the amendment. What does this mean? Was found to refer not to the defense of a particular state, but to the protection of the national polity. If I got that right, P-O-L-I-T-Y. Excuse me if I mispronounce it. Basically, it means the national government. Court's writing, okay? I'm just taking their words. Accepting, and going on, they're accepting the historical and contemporaneous use of the phrase keep and bear arms. That this often arose in connection with military activities. The court noted that its use was not limited to these contexts. Are you getting this? Where'd they find all of this? 27 words, the Supreme Court. They don't like it, argue with them. I'm just relating information to you and for you to consider. The court reviewed the contemporaneous state constitutions, post-enactment commentary, and subsequent case law to conclude that the purpose of the right to keep and bear arms extended beyond the context of the militia service to include, get this, self-defense. You see the word self-defense in there? I don't. But the court said that's what that means.
Hey, Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to need you to summarize here shortly.
Okay, I only have paragraphs left. Using the individual rights theory, the court, now again, this here is the District of Columbia versus Heller. What the hell was that case all about? They struck down a District of Columbia law that banned virtually all handguns and required that any other type of firearm in a home be disassembled or bound by a trigger lock at all times. The court rejected the arguments that the handguns could be banned as long as other guns, such as long guns, were available, noting that for a variety of reasons, handguns are the most popular weapon chosen by Americans for self-defense. Likewise, the requirement that firearms be rendered inoperable at all times was found to limit the core lawful purpose of self-defense. So having someone go to say, oh, you're in a park, kick your gun out to the car. What have you just done? What you have done here was you have went against the pronouncement of the Supreme Court by saying, violating the core lawful purpose of self-defense. And one more paragraph and I'll be done here. That's kind of short. Now, in another Supreme Court case, Prince versus the U.S., Justice Thomas, concurring in the court's invalidation of the Brady Handgun Violence Protection Act, questioned whether the Second Amendment bars federal regulation of gun sales and suggested the court might determine at some future date whether Justice Story was correct, that the right to bear arms has justly been considered as the palladium of the liberties of a republic. Oh, wish I would have said that, but I'm just telling you what the court said. Thank you for your time.
Brian Jones.
I'm Brian Jones. I'm from 6 612 Meadowcrest, Rockton. The reason why I'm here is I'm concerned about the trends of this abolition of gun use and for the said personal protection and whatnot. I just will ask a simple question. Is the Constitution big enough to extend through these walls? If it is not, we got some problems. We have to disclose to the people what's going on. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. That's all the sign-up sheets that I had for this evening. Is there anyone else wishing? Sure. Sure. Just state your name and address for the record. If there's anyone else that's willing to speak on their citizens participation, this would be the time.
James Pardee, P-A-R-D-E-E, 3703 South Murray Road, Janesville. I was born and raised in Janesville, but I consider Beloit more my hometown. I work at Warner Electric and have since 1977 in the engineering department. And I would like to bring up some viewpoints that I don't think have been covered yet tonight. There are three threats to the general public from gun-bearing criminals. Number one is personal protection from crime. In other words, concealed carry will protect you from a criminal. Number two is a lone gunman / mass murderer, which is extremely rare. It makes the national news, and I don't think it's really happened in this state, if I'm not mistaken, other than like this burning of the bus thing and a few things like that. But you know what I mean. The guy jumps on the stage and starts shooting away. And number three is a terrorist activity, which again is extremely rare. But unfortunately, in these days and these times, we have to consider such things. Okay, so there are two situations that bring to mind that these three situations play into. Anytime there is a group of unarmed people in a confined space, you have a potential problem with number two or number three, the lone gunman or the terrorist. And with number three, you have a potential problem with the infrastructure being at risk. Waterworks, water tower, fire department, even police department, even though they're armed, I believe the terrorists would target such a place. Again, I don't know if this will ever happen, but we have to think about these things nowadays. So therefore, I believe it would be wise to consider allowing concealed carry for teachers to protect them and their students. Now, this hasn't been mentioned tonight. Not require, but allow concealed carry by teachers. By the way, I've taken a concealed carry course, and it's a tremendous weight on your shoulders once you have this training and knowledge. You don't take it lightly. If you're a Christian person or whatever other religion, they don't condone, undue use of force. Okay, so in other situations, I believe it would be wise to consider concealed carry for public employees that run the critical infrastructure like the waterworks, wastewater treatment, transit operation, and fire department. Also, the public recreational facilities and buses should be treated as any other facility for concealed carry and should be allowed in those modalities. So that's basically what I have to say. And
okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak under citizens' participation this evening? Seeing none, I will close the citizens' participation portion of the agenda and move to item 6. Item 6 is the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered at this point on the agenda. Is there any council member who would like anything removed from the consent agenda, which is 6A through 6C? Seeing none, is there a motion for approval of the consent agenda? Motion by Lukey. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vander Bogart. All those in favor of approval say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, passes 6-0. Item 7 is ordinances. Item 7A, please.
Proposed ordinance to repeal and recreate Section 15.07 Sub 1, to create Section 15.07 Sub 1G, and to amend Sections 15.01 and 15.30 of the Code of General Ordinances of the City of Beloit pertaining to dangerous weapons in city buildings.
Attorney Casper, please.
Thank you. The staff report was previously presented at the last meeting along with the draft ordinance. There have been no changes to the draft ordinance since then. There was substantial discussion at the last meeting. I expect the same tonight. I think rather than add anything in the way of a further staff report, I'll be here and attempt to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval of item 7A? Motion by DeForest, second by Lukey. Council discussion. Councilor Haynes.
I'd like to start. There's a couple of questions that have come up since that I would like to have answered. There was some initial discussion, and we were discussing how staff might feel intimidated by concealed carry. It's, Mr. Attorney, I would like to submit this question to you. Does or does not the current concealed carry law state something about exposing the weapon for purposes of intimidation?
My recollection is that that is, in fact, in the law, and I think if it's regardless, I don't know that an exposed gun used for intimidation would remain in the concealed category. I think that would then.
Right. So it's my understanding that that's already handled by law. We don't need anything special. So there's really that shouldn't be a non-issue, is my understanding. Okay. One other question that's come up is the issue of the few city-owned buildings that we have that we may be leasing out. In this case, would we be leaving those facilities up to the leaseor to make the determination on whether they would allow carry or not?
My understanding is that that is the city's intent. Facilities such as this one just comes to mind, the Angel Museum, city-owned, leased, or licensed by some other organization. It would be up to those folks to decide what to do with that particular facility and other like facilities in the city.
And something that wasn't clear to me. Mr. Zorl in his handout states that under our ordinance this would make a violation. He states as a Class A misdemeanor versus a standard forfeiture. Would you explain? Is he correct in that, or is?
No. The city cannot legislate in the criminal arena. Only the state legislature can do that. We can legislate in the civil or ordinance arena. Anything that comes into municipal court is a civil and not a criminal charge, whether it's a speeding ticket, a housing code violation, or possibly something under this ordinance should it be passed. It would not create a criminal record nor constitute a criminal charge.
Okay. All right. Those are just the questions that have come up since I initially, some of the initial discussions. I think I'd like to make a couple of comments here. Basically, when I review an ordinance such as this that's relating to public safety and these matters, I have a test consisting of characteristics that I'm looking for. I think of the objective. I think of enforceability. I think of the likelihood of an incident, who is targeted by the law, and the likeliness of effectiveness. And I feel that this ordinance fails this test on several issues. Namely, enforcement, because we just simply don't plan to enforce it unless at some point it comes to our attention that a weapon is carried. I believe that we have to consider the risk of incident, and I'm concluding that since we're targeting simply people who have concealed carry permits, which represents even in the most even in the states that have the most permits, it's used generally substantially less than 1% of the population. our most self-reliant and law-abiding citizen, I think that the odds of us having an incident are just this close to zero. I believe, as far as potential effectiveness, it simply will not be effective. The only thing that I believe that we're going to be achieving here is something of a placebo effect to assuage the fears of over events that have a very near 0% chance of possibility. So generally, this does not meet my litmus test. But unfortunately, I'm a pragmatist. I understand that there's enough support for this among a variety of people that there's enough support for this for this council to probably move forward. Being pragmatic, I do see this ordinance with certain language provisions are things that I cannot accept. But I would propose to my colleagues that they would, that if it is your intent and insistence to move forward with this, that there are several points of ordinance language that I believe must be minimally amended for me to consider supporting you in moving forward. The first one is in the definitions under Section 2, 1G, Paragraph A, the definitions of dangerous weapon. At the end of it, the last sentence states, or any other device or instrumentality which, in the manner it is used or intended to be used, is calculated or likely to produce death or great bodily harm. This is an unacceptable catch-all. It basically leaves it grossly open to interpretation as to what potentially a weapon could be, and I don't find it acceptable. 2, I believe that our language is too encompassing, and when we move upwards into the section of the Section 1, where it discusses the locations that where we intend to restrict, I find it unacceptable to include bathroom shelters in the parks. I believe we have carry is allowed in the parks, and it's just there's no overriding concern here. Even if we were worried about protecting staff members and having them feel comfortable, there's no staff members in our bathrooms. I think that's just an unnecessary situation. So for where in here where it goes to, I believe it is subparagraph N, parks, buildings, and other open-air shelters, I would also submit that to my colleagues that it at least should also include exempting other than open-air shelters and park bathrooms. Those are absolutely the most important things that I think that would reduce the public's exposure being casually fined. I think that's all I've got for the moment.
Okay. And before I move on, Madam Clerk, do you have those, or did you need them, or do you guys have them? Mm-hmm. Okay. Councilor DeForest.
Mr. Casper, I thought in our last discussion, when we first read this, that there was an agreement, a general agreement that Ms. Krieger agreed to, that the word locations would be taken out of Section 1, Paragraph 1. Is that, but in our current reading, it's still there. Is that removed, or do we need to make an amendment to remove that word?
We would need an amendment. The City Attorney's Office would not object to such an amendment. I think it's well taken to make that sentence read, the prohibition applies to all city buildings and facilities.
And then also I have another question, and I'm sorry I didn't ask this ahead of time because I'm just being alerted to it now in our citizens participation discussion. Do you happen to know what is the approximate fine if someone is caught with a concealed carry at a business that posted a sign prohibiting it? Do we have any idea what that fine is in terms of being consistent with the amount of fine that we're leveraging?
That fine would be provided in the state statute. I believe that it's $100 plus circuit court costs, which would take it to roughly $200.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, do you think it, I'm just asking, do you think it would be possible to align our fee for such a violation? Because I would consider it in some ways a like violation. Is it possible to have language that says that our fee would be comparable to a similar offense at a private establishment or business that posted against prohibiting concealed carry? Is that doable even? I don't know, I'm just asking.
I would be somewhat concerned with using a term comparable. I'd rather either set a specific but lowered amount or adopt by reference the state statutory fine.
Okay. And I guess I would say, I don't know, Charles, if you were making a motion for those amendments. I would second them if that's what you were doing.
If I may, let me do this. Let me entertain other councilors' discussion before we move to that motion, because I got a feeling the way the discussion is going, we may have other things that come out, and if we need to make adjustments, I would rather do it all under one motion than have 8 or 9 motions, and I'm trying to figure out which one goes first, second, and third. Okay, thank you. If that's all right with Councilor Haynes and Councilor Forrest. Okay, Councilor Van der Bogart.
I would have a question of Attorney Casper. Do we have any information about the experiences in other states with or without posting and banning in public facilities? Do we have any information along those lines?
Beyond anecdotal information, no. The League of Wisconsin Municipalities has been attempting to survey that without much success. Other city attorneys' offices have been doing the same. Our office has made some efforts at that, but there is no comprehensive study that we've been able to find.
Is there any information, I know this is very, very recent here in Wisconsin, November 1st, but any information about the experiences of other cities and municipalities in Wisconsin? My reading shows that some have posted and some have not. Is there any rationale that comes through the literature one way or the other as far as these other councils or municipalities making these decisions?
My primary source of information on that is a Wisconsin city attorney listserv. It's an email chain to which most every city attorney in the state is a member of, and many thoughts and discussions occur on. And again, there have been cities that have considered and not adopted. There's been cities and other institutions, the college system, technical colleges here locally, for example, that have adopted. I would be just guessing to try to assign a percentage or a number at those that have considered and not adopted versus those that have considered and adopted.
So it would be correct to say there certainly is a split in the authorities across the state?
That's a fair statement, yes.
Do you have any information more current than the press release that was in the newspaper that I believe last week Senator Cullen was making an inquiry of the Attorney General? I think it was primarily for the private sector question in terms of how this works with liability waivers, those sorts of things. Is there any updated information that you have along those lines?
I am not aware that there's been any formal response to the Senator's inquiry. I did see, I think, much the same press account of that inquiry that you're referring to. The liability issue, the state law does provide, I think one of the prepared comments contains the exact phrasing on it, that anyone that any owner or occupant of a facility that decides not to post is enjoys some immunity or freedom from liability as to that decision. Again, that's been discussed extensively. There's a number of law firms in the state that engage in extensive municipal practice that have sent newsletters out on this. I think I've reviewed at least 6 to 8 of those. The CIVMIC has, well, CIVMIC is the city's, our particular city's insurance carrier. Also
You've anticipated my next question. Go ahead.
Insures a number of other cities in the state. There's other insurance carriers out there, but CIVMIC happens to be the one that we're associated with. They've addressed the liability and joined essentially the opinion of the private firms that while the liability may have some significance to private business owners and occupants, for municipal and other governmental entities, it does not add or detract anything. That municipalities in particular enjoyed governmental immunity prior to November 1 and continue to enjoy it. And so that immunity or freedom from liability for a decision to post would not be a significant factor for a city government. CIVMIC, as to the merits of a recommendation of whether a city should or should not choose to post, has sent out a memo stating that they are not taking a position one way or the other on the wisdom of that.
Do you have an opinion based on what you've seen or read or your inkling if you were giving advice here to your city council? Are we on firm ground just to post and do nothing else in terms of enforcement of an ordinance? Or are we on in a dangerous position?
We would continue to enjoy our governmental immunity if we chose to post. And there's arguments both ways that by posting, you create a target-rich environment for the criminal. By not posting, you create a plethora of guns and possible accidental discharges. I don't see the liability as a factor that should sway the decision either way. That opinion seems to be shared by. I haven't seen any attorney that's argued otherwise. Let me see that. Let me say that.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Sprite.
Thank you. I wanted to make a few comments. I don't personally consider myself an anti-gun person. My dad's an NRA member, supports concealed carry generally. I can see arguments on both sides here, and I've spent a bit of time thinking about it. And I want to be clear that this ordinance, as proposed, wouldn't take away any rights of that gun owners had prior to November 1st in the state of Wisconsin. The state legislature legalized concealed carry generally, and then included a provision that lets us decide how to handle city buildings. And despite Supreme Court opinions talking about a personal right to bear arms, and I'm not saying I disagree with that, I'm not aware of anything in the Supreme Court that says that the state was required to allow concealed carry, or that the provision allowing us to decide the fate of our buildings doesn't apply. So regardless of what you think, we have to do something. There really is no default here. We have to update our ordinances to reflect the fact that there are state changes. And I've probably received more comments on this particular issue than I did on the entire city budget, which surprises me, and I guess I wish that more people would be engaged on a wider range of issues, but clearly there's passion on both sides here. And I've appreciated talking with some of you on both sides about some of the details, and I think that's informed some of the discussion about possible changes we might consider tonight. I am certainly open to continuing to look at how the ordinance is working if it does pass, and if there's any future changes that are needed. I think I tend to come down on the side that the extreme situations on whether we have the ordinance in place or whether we don't, in terms of guns being used and people being hurt, are quite remote, but we still have to decide something to figure out what's in place if that happens. And I think there's clearly also a comfort issue in terms of people wanting to be in the public places, either carrying a gun that makes them feel comfortable or not having to deal with other people carrying a gun that makes them feel comfortable. Ultimately, although the discussion here tonight from citizens' participation was fairly one-sided, I did receive quite a few emails and other comments, and I think those ran a little bit more in favor of supporting the ordinance when you consider that along with discussion tonight. So I'm interested in looking at some of the fine-tuning we can do with it, but ultimately I think that it's worth keeping in place essentially the policy that we've had up until now, and that seems to have worked for us, and I hope that it continues to do so. Are we at a point where an amendment would be in order, or should I continue to hold off?
A couple more councilors need
to
speak. Councilor Lupke.
Attorney Casper, it's true, or define for me, a business in Beloit per se can regulate on its own the use of a weapon or the use of weapons inside the building.
Yes, this ordinance has no effect on a private business owner's decision to post or not post.
So the Beloit Hospital, for one, the two largest employers in Beloit, to my understanding, don't allow weapons. The Beloit Memorial Hospital with about 1,000 employees and the Beloit Public Schools do not allow weapons. That's
I haven't been to either recently, so I don't know.
The signs are posted at the hospital, and I know the schools. So this would not be a first in Beloit, then?
It sounds like that's accurate, yes.
And I think it's a real concern with people who come in to pay bills, who might be irate sometimes. And again, I agree with Mark, it's a very, very small percentage. But when people are upset, they could do something that's very irrational. That's the point I want to make.
Councilor DeForest.
I would just like to state that I feel very strongly that this ordinance does not take away anyone's constitutional rights. That Supreme Court decision that was referenced in 2008, I am familiar with it. And it was not a unanimous decision. There were dissenters. So there were Supreme Court justices who disagreed with the decision that was rendered. And just like some of those Supreme Court justices, I have a different interpretation of the Second Amendment. So I would just like to emphasize I am in support of constitutional rights and maintaining those, but my vote does not in any way represent a desire to take away someone's constitutional rights. I do feel that this body does have the right to regulate concealed carry in our buildings. Thank you.
Anyone else, any other councilor wishing to speak on this issue? Seeing Councilor Spreitzer, after Councilor Spreitzer gets done, before we actually make a motion to the amendment, I guess I would like to have it repeated so we know exactly what we're making a motion on, because I heard Councilor DeForest bring up a couple situations, and also Councilor Haynes and other councils as well. So I just want to make sure that as we move forward, we are all acting on the voting on the appropriate motion. Councilor Spreitzer. Or did you want to wait till they repeat it?
No, I was going to suggest language for it, but if you have language written down, that's...
Do we have language, or you want to hear what...
I've attempted, other than Mr. Forrest's comment on the amount of the forfeiture, the other suggestions, as I understand them, and I'll go from the front to the back, there's three of them. The first would be in the definition, or the lead-in to the listing of city facilities where concealed carry would be prohibited. The last sentence of that lead-in currently states the prohibition applies to all city buildings, facilities, and locations, including but not limited to. We would strike out "and locations," add the word "and" between city buildings and facilities. It would then read, the prohibition applies to all city buildings and facilities, including but not limited to, and then proceed with the list A through T with M as in Mary, having additional language added at the end of it. It currently reads, and this would be a prohibited place, park buildings other than open-air park shelters. It would be amended to read park buildings other than open-air park shelters and park restroom facilities.
Did you say M or, because I've
M
seen
is-
that as N.
M
I've
is
seen that as an N. It's N. N as in
Yours
Nancy.
doesn't look the same as ours.
N.
N as in Nancy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then in the, what's section 2 of the ordinance of the ordinance before you, 1G of the actual language, the definition of dangerous weapon, we would strike everything after the parenthetical, which starts at the third line to the end. We would strike the language entirely reading or any other device or instrumentality which in the manner it is used or intended to be used is calculated or likely to reduce death or great bodily harm. The rest of the definition would remain the same.
Okay.
Mr. Casper, I believe that sounded fine from what I had. I believe I found a second instance, though, of the word locations. In the first sentence, it says buildings, facilities, or locations, and then the second sentence that you referenced has the buildings, facilities, and locations. So I assume we would want to change either both of them or none of them.
Yes. Yeah, and that's part of there's two sentences in that lead-in paragraph 1. The first sentence would, if the council favors it, would be similarly amended. I'll just read the last end of that sentence. It's somewhat long. Other than a law enforcement officer to enter or remain in the city of Beloit municipal buildings and facilities, but or locations would be deleted and would be added between buildings and facilities.
I think you'd want to add or, not and, or am I wrong?
I think you're correct. Yeah, that would be in the...
And do we need to address anything as relates to the fines, or are we comfortable with where we are now? And I know Councilor DeForest had mentioned something about that. I just want to make sure that as we move forward to make the motion that we are considering everything that we need to at one time.
I think that mentioned that we would want the fines for city facilities to match the state statute for other businesses. But it's perfectly pertinent. I think that's that the fine should be identical to what would be sanctioned against an individual who carried in a posted business.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have the state statutes down here with me. That would require a little bit more redrafting, I think, than I'm capable of doing here on the floor. What I might suggest as an alternate, currently that the suggestion in 1507 sub 1 is 300 first offense, 400 second, 500 third, that the council consider an amendment with much lowered city forfeitures of either 50 or 100 for a first, and a step increase for second or third from there.
All right, then. Well, yeah. Right, essentially. And I would support that.
City Manager.
Mr. President, that's a parking ticket. This is a fairly serious offense if we're going to put this into place. I wish we had all that material here. Unfortunately, the attorney that did the research on all of this is not present this evening. I'm sure those fines sync out with what other cities have done, what the statute permits. Possibly, if you would like, and let me point out that there's two sets of fines here, so we need to be a little careful as to exactly which one we're referring to, because the first set of fines refers to failure to carry and displaying the appropriate license. So if you're carrying and you get caught and you get questioned by it, a citation is issued. If you have a license and you don't display it, the fine is like 25 bucks. If you're in, the building with the dangerous weapon, then the fine would be $300 for first offense and $400 for the second, $500 for the third. If you're concerned about those amounts, what you might want to do for tonight is just lower the first offense to $200, make the second $400 and the third $500. If there's some concern about the fines, but they're not a lot. It's not a lot of money considering the nature of the potential offense.
The most for the first offense that I would like to see is $100.
So if we say the first offense is $100, where do we go with the second and third offense?
I wouldn't see a problem with doubling it and then going 500.
So you're saying 100, 200, 500.
That would certainly be an escalation.
And I guess looking at this, when we say restrictions on dangerous weapons in city facilities, I think that as we look at this issue, I think it's a very serious issue. I'm comfortable with where the fines are now because, as Councilor Lupke has stated before, I think we need to let everyone know how serious this is. I'm comfortable with where the fines are right now. I'm also comfortable with the other amendments that was put forth on this motion, but I would hope that at this particular time that we would at least leave the fines where they are and move forward with the other amendments to the ordinance.
Mr. President?
Councilor Spreitzer.
Could I suggest that if we are going to consider amendments related to fines, that we consider them separately from the set of amendments we've discussed so far? It seems like there might be more consensus there, and I don't know what we'd end up adopting on the fines, but I wouldn't want to hurt the entire proposal if we get bogged down on disagreement on the fines issue.
But I want to make sure that I'm clear as I move forward this motion, because I want to make sure that if we move forward and we vote on the amendments that have been made thus far, that does not encompass the fine, because my understanding, and I could be wrong, that the amendments that are made to the original motion, right now the amendments to the changes before the fines, if we approve that, are we not approving also the fines?
There hasn't been a motion or a second for any amendment at this point. You're free to take them separately and vote on them separately, or put them together as one, or separate the fines. It's up to whoever makes the motion which part they want to include.
Okay. So we are at a point right now to entertain a motion on item 7A. Councilor DeForest.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that the amendments that are included are the removal of the word locations in the two instances that were cited by Attorney Casper, and that the language related to park bathrooms that have been referenced as included under item section 1(n) as in Nancy be included. That's the amendment I would like to make at this time.
There is a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Motion by DeForest, seconded by Haynes. Any council discussion on that motion on the amendments? Seeing none, I would entertain a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Councilor Spreitzer.
Mr. President, I would move that we make the change regarding the definition of dangerous weapons to strike the language after the parenthetical that Attorney Casper previously mentioned.
I'll second that motion, Mr. President.
Motion by Spreitzer, second by DeForest. Any councilor comments or discussion? Councilor Van der Bogart.
This would be a question, I guess, of Attorney Casper. I may have missed it, but there's nothing in here that I noticed that talks about the potential use or carrying of pepper spray, Capstan. Is that accurate?
That's correct. That's not covered in the state's, in this newly visited portion of the state statutes on concealed weapons. There are other statutes on capsaicin or pepper spray, whatever you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council comments or questions? Seeing none, there is a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Any other motions or amendments at this time? Seeing Councilor Spreitzer.
Mr. President, I would move that we change the fine structure to be 200, 400, 500, so that the initial fine would be reduced by $100, which would probably bring it a little more in line with the state statute of $100 plus court fees, but keep the fine higher for repeat offenses because that gives people a chance to learn on the first try.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Spreitzer, second by DeForest. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Nay. Passes 4-2. So now we've had 3 amendments to this motion. They've all passed. So now we need to move to the merits, am I correct, of
Yes.
approval. Is there a motion to approve item 7A with all of the,
Your motion is already.
you already made?
Table, Mr. Chairman. You have to have a motion before you can do amendments.
Okay.
So the underlying motion was made first. You
Just
now
wanna
have
make
3
sure.
Amendments. If there are no more amendments from counselors, then it's time
Okay.
for a vote on the merits of the
All right.
underlying motion to approve.
Got you. Any Councilor Vandy Bogart?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a number of comments on the merits of the motion before us. First of all, I would echo the observation from some of my fellow counselors that we've received, or I've received, more passionate contact from citizens on this issue than I think just about anything in my entire 8 years on the council. There are various good points on many sides of the argument, and this is an issue that's obviously of great import to what appears to be a relatively small number of people, but they're very vocal. I think to a degree, this is a reflection of our times. I think that we can't avoid a vote here. The legislature in Madison has given us the opportunity or requirement, or however you want to phrase it, to wrestle with this issue, and I'm prepared to go forward and make a vote. My decision at this point is, and I will vote against this, not simply out of some desire to please one group or upset another, but I think it's totally ineffective. I think posting a sign on a door will do nothing to deter someone who is determined to cause a problem. And it will be one more thing that will be ignored by someone with that sort of a mindset. The question of liability seems to be somewhat, or my concern about liability seems to be somewhat lessened after comments from Attorney Casper. But I do have the question of the interplay of municipal immunity, waiver of liability on the decision to post or not post, and whether or not this somehow creates an obligation on the municipality to do more than post. It doesn't, as it stands now, require us to put detectors or lock boxes or other sorts of things. But yeah, I don't know whether that will come of this or not at some point. But my vote will be against this ordinance because I think it is totally ineffective to stop what you want to stop. You want to stop the bad guys or bad ladies from coming in with weapons and doing harm, and I don't think this will do that.
Thank you. Councilor Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to echo Councilor Vanderbogart's statements on this. I don't think this is an ordinance that ultimately passes the threshold of effectiveness. I know it's a passionate issue. We're basically, I believe that this is going to pass. I'm not happy with it at all. I think it's a placebo. I think that it's non-substantive in many ways, and it's just falls down to ideological bounds, not something that's actually going to make anyone any safer. I would like to thank my colleagues for the discussion and for their willingness to make the necessary changes to at least reduce some of its overburden on our constituents. Thank you.
Any other council comments or concerns, questions? Seeing none, there is a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving 7A, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-2. Item 8 is appointments. The Appointment Review Committee met, and I, Kevin D. Levy, duly elected president of the Beloit City Council, subject to confirmation by the Beloit City Council, do hereby appoint the following citizen members to the vacancies and terms indicated below. Said appointments being pursuant to nominations made by and approved by the Appointment Review Committee at the regular meeting held November 14, 2011, to the Alcohol Beverage License Control Committee, Tina Geck, 2403 Turnberry Drive, replacing Mark Dax as School District of Beloit representative for the 2011-2012 school year. Park Recreation and Conservation Advisory Commission, Michael K. McNulty, 1245 Eaton Avenue, replacing Peter J. Marino for a term ending September 30th, 2014. Police and Fire Commission, Timmy Link, 1820 East Caroline Drive, replacing David T. Theron for a term ending April 30th, 2010. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion by Vandenbogart, second by Lukey. All those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? Hearing none, they are approved. Thank you. Item 9 is council activities and upcoming events. Councilor DeForest.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to share that I thoroughly enjoyed the Veterans Program at Grinnell Hall on Veterans Day. Was very emotionally touched. I don't think there was a dry eye in the room. And I would like to especially thank John Powers. For those of you who don't know Mr. Powers, he went above and beyond to provide a Veterans Memorial meal on Veterans Day to all the veterans in the area, out of his own pocket, and it was a gourmet meal. It was he used to be a chef and provided a 5-star, top-rate, high-class meal for veterans, and as rightfully they deserved, for recognition for their service. So I just would like to thank John Powers. I'd like to thank all the individuals who volunteered at Grinnell Hall on the committee to help make that activity a great success, and I was honored to be present and be a part of it. Thank you.
Councilor Haynes.
I have nothing to add today.
Councilor Spreitzer.
Thank you. I had a chance to get away for a week up to Toronto to visit my sister, and was glad to do that and appreciative that nothing seems to have caught terribly hot fire while I was gone, so glad everything was still here waiting for me. Also had the chance to attend the State Line Community Foundation annual meeting and awards banquet on Friday, and it was a great event. A couple of other counselors were there, got to hear about some of the great programs that organization is supporting, and just a wonderful chance to hear about great things going on in our community.
That's it? Okay. Councilor Lupke.
I, too, joined Mark and Jim at that banquet on Friday night. That was very nice. I was honored also to represent the council and City Manager Arf at the 92nd NAACP banquet on November 12th as a council representative. And I also want to thank the Beloit Memorial High School students for being here, these seniors from Mr. Hoy's advanced placement history class, taking good notes and getting good grades in their class. Thank you for being here, ladies.
Councilor Vandenbogart.
As has been mentioned, I did the State Line Community Foundation on last Friday night. Nice event, even though Ms. Tinder forgot to introduce Councilor Lupke till near the end. She made amends.
The rookie.
Yeah. But the other thing I'd like to mention is encourage people to come down on this coming Friday night for the lighted Christmas parade. Santa arrives around 5 or 5:30. The official first-time lighting of the newly installed gantry, so it should be a festive event. And as I understand, the weather isn't going to be so bone-chilling cold that we'll need snow removal in advance. So we should have a good time.
Now, we also want to let the people in departments of public works know that just because Santa is coming, that does not mean they have to give us a whole bunch of snow. I mean, it's okay. I think he can still make it. But I want to thank the students as well to sit out through the entire meeting and listen to the debates. I think it does well to, when you go back and people may say, what is that crazy city council doing down there? You can say they really have some good dialogue and debate going on, similar to what you would have at your student council meetings. So as you see how we do things down here, and the important thing that I would say is you may disagree down here, but when you walk away, you're still not disagreeable. You still are colleagues and you still can relate to each other. And we don't hold grudges, but we make sure that we do what's right for the city. In your case, you do what's right for the school. But it's important that once you finish debating, you go about business as usual and make sure that you do not let your debate affect the professionalism that you exhibit. So that's my little 2 cents there. And that concludes my comments. Item 10, the city manager's presentation.
Mr. President, considering the lateness of the hour and the amount of effort that was put in this evening regarding the dangerous weapons ordinance, we'd like to offer a postponement of the presentation on the snow removal program for the coming 11 and 12 winter. The weather forecast, fortunately, is very good for the next couple of weeks, so we're cautiously optimistic that we probably could come back on December 6th and do this presentation. Quite frankly, we're anticipating an even lighter agenda than we had tonight, other than that one item. But I think it would be nice if Councilor Van de Bogart could present the proclamation this evening, since this was the officially designated day. Mr. Slagowski is here tonight. If you could present that to him, then he can take it back and they'll post it, I'm sure, in a place of honor in the operations facility. We would appreciate that.
And as you make
snow-free operation center.
The snow-free.
What that really means is cutbacks in the city manager's office means he doesn't want to have to retype this thing with a different date.
And as you get ready, we want to thank you for your patience and understanding and willingness to reschedule your presentation.
All right. Well, this is an official proclamation of the city of Beloit expressing appreciation to all public works employees engaged in snow and ice removal operations. Whereas during the average winter, southern Wisconsin receives 40 to 60 inches of snow, and whereas removing snow and ice from more than 185 miles of roadways in the city of Beloit is an extraordinary task performed by the city of Beloit Public Works Department staff, and whereas during and after winter storms, City of Beloit snowplow drivers apply years of knowledge and skill in a determined effort to keep roadways safe for use by residents, along with commercial and emergency vehicles. And whereas the Department of Public Works has received the Excellence in Snow and Ice Award from the American Public Works Association for their best practices in snow and ice removal while minimizing environmental impacts. And whereas the Department of Public Works has been a leader in developing new and innovative snow and ice control processes, then training their counterparts in other communities in these snow and ice removal strategies, providing further validation that the Beloit Department of Public Works has an exceptional snow and ice removal operation. And whereas in light of the valuable service performed by snowplow drivers, the City of Beloit and the Wisconsin Department of Transportation encourages citizens to exercise extreme caution when they encounter snowplows upon roadways, and to limit non-essential driving during snow emergencies to allow snowplow drivers to safely and efficiently clear streets and highways. Now, therefore, I, Kevin Levy, City Council President of the City of Beloit, do hereby proclaim Monday, November 21st, 2011, as Snowplow Driver Appreciation Day throughout the City of Beloit, and urge citizens and the City Council to acknowledge the extraordinary effort and exemplary dedication exhibited by all snowplow operators and support staff during the snow and ice removal operations. Presented this 21st day of November, 2011. Kevin Levy, Council President. Congratulations, Mr. Starkey.
Thank you. I just did want to pass on from our staff. They wanted to say thank you to all of you for recognizing the work that they do. Our guys are very proud of what they do. They take very much ownership in what they do. Larry came out today and met with them, and to see this, they were really impressed that you guys are really paying attention. And of course, the governor as well. He has done the same thing for today. So thank you.
Thank you. Item 11 is reports from boards and city officers. There are none. Item 12, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by DeForest. Second by Spreitzer. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned. No, he just did it. He just made it.